Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Leeds series. The city of Leeds is one of the 5 metropolitan boroughs of West Yorkshire. 38 civil parishes lie within its boundaries. Which slice of the city are we seeing today? Welcome back to the city of Leeds, everybody. Now today I'm wearing a shirt that you haven't seen before. I probably look like a pound shop sailor boy wearing this, but this was bought for the holiday we had in Suffolk earlier this year, and yeah, this is its first outing in a northern part of the country to make one of these episodes. Now today I'm in a place that's full of history. It's got all sorts of things to talk about. It's got an interesting name as well. The main village is called Bramham, but the parish's name is Bramham cum Oglethorpe. Well, that might be pronounced Oglethorpe, given how people in this part of the world say things like that. This Leeds video is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find her link in the description. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Today we have the village of Bramham in the city of Leeds, located 3 miles south of Wetherby, midway between Leeds and York, and about 12 miles south of Harrogate. Beginning on New Road, we've got a familiar stretch of water to cross before we get going properly. That's Bramham Beck, or if you will, Carbeck, as it goes by 2 different names. In fact, make that 5 different names. I've explained that one before in the Wothersome episode. New Road starts us off walking away from the centre of the village towards the church. All Saints Church is one of Bramham's most instantly recognisable features, towering as it does over the village at its northeastern end. We'll return to this shortly to have a proper look. Let's go up Low Way first, where we pass the front of the village hall, where community-based activities take place, including various groups and classes. Name-wise, Bramham comes from the Old English words brom, meaning broom, and ham, meaning homestead, and thus this once meant homestead characterised by broom, whatever that is. Bramham is similar to Clifford in its general makeup. It's constructed primarily around one road, that's Front Street, which we'll touch on later, and most of its properties are stone built. It's located in something known as the Golden Triangle, a term commonly used by estate agents for the area of West and North Yorkshire lying between Harrogate, York and the North of Leeds. It has a number of old buildings of interest. Take for example this former Wesleyan Methodist church, a date for which eluded me in my research, but it's now been converted. This is the bottom then of Town Hill. Make no mistake, Bramham is not a flat place. There are hills pretty much all over the village, but if you know where to go to avoid them, it's a pleasant walk this. This white building on the corner of Town Hill is the old post office. Keep this in mind because at the very end of the video today, there's something else which is Royal Mail related. I climbed up to the top of Town Hill, which isn't the steepest incline really. Just wait until you see some of the others Bramham has. Now, what's the one good thing about climbing a hill? The view from the top. That ain't half bad. There are two public houses in the village. This is the first of them, the Swan, which according to Wikipedia has a Dominoes team. We'll get to the Red Lion later, and there was a third pub too. That was called the White Horse, which closed in 2010, and it's now a private residence. What goes up must come down. You're looking down Church Hill here. This gives us a lovely little picturesque shot of the church and the village hall as we get closer to the bottom. I thought this area typified Bramham perfectly. Let's take a look at All Saints Church next. There are Commonwealth war graves here, but there are also some other graves of note, including those of English Civil War soldiers who died during the Battle of Marston Moor in 1644. There's also a war memorial here too. The churchyard is an oval shape, which denotes that it's Anglican in origin. However, the oldest part of the church was built in around 1150 by the Normans. The church consists of a nave, aisles, a chancel with tower and a short spire, and it has a fine pointed doorway. Church functions take place in the village hall. So far then, I've only really touched on the centre of the village, around the village hall and the church. Haven't really left the area yet and gone exploring, and already there's plenty to talk about. There's lots more yet. Bramham is not the biggest of places, but it does have one heck of a lot of history. Now we're exiting the churchyard, but I will give you one more bit of history about it before we leave. Under a yew tree are the graves of several pupils and the headmaster of the former Bramham College. Former pupils of Bramham College formed Bradford Football Club in 1863, the club which would go on to be the modern-day Bradford Park Avenue. There's some more about the college in a bit. We're now at the very eastern edge of the village, looking back down towards the Swan off Aberford Road. Take note of the road sign here. These roads only get more unsuitable as we go on. Our next major landmark is the village playing field, which we'll access via Folly Lane, one of the village's more modern areas. This is Freely Lane Sports Field. It's a playground and recreational area, as well as being where Bramham Football Club, originally founded in 1907, plays the home games. The club has two teams in the Harrogate and District League. It reformed in 2005 and won the Barkston Ash Cup in the same year. Bramham FC also has junior and girls football teams. It's always a good idea to get the hilly areas out of the way first, because then if you've climbed a hill, you then go back down the hill and it's a lot easier. And speaking of going down hills, leaving the playing field and the pavilion behind, we're heading for Almshouses Hill, which is quite steep, because I had a look on Google Maps before I came here to see whether or not it was better to walk down it or walk up it, and believe you me, it's going to be better to walk down it. Now we're on Freely Lane, and through those trees is Bramham House, a once fine country residence, which has now been abandoned after being used as an orphanage. Bramham House has stood derelict ever since the home closed in the early 1980s, and the children were moved to another home in Wetherby, which too has since been demolished. Freely Lane starts to become narrower towards its end, and eventually it changes its name to Almshouse Hill. This is the steepest hill in the village. There are no vehicles allowed down Almshouse Hill, and for good reason. It's even bollarded off halfway up, so nothing can get up or down. I'm glad I took this road downhill. Speaking of Bramham's roads, it's at sort of a crossroads between two majorly important routes. Here we're on Front Street, which used to be part of the old Great North Road. As well as the Great North Road, Bramham sits on the Roman road from York through Tadcaster to Ilkley, giving it another historical facet going back to Roman times. There's all sorts of things in this little area. I'm stood in front of something called the Bramham Senior Citizens Centre. Nice little building there. There's also Parish notice board, which is here. I'll put a card on that in a moment. There's something here about some kind of project development plan. Not quite sure what that's all about. I'm sure you Bramham locals might know more about that than I do. There's also a turnpike stone here as well. We'll get a proper look at that in a moment. And across the way we've got what looks to be some kind of cross. Not sure if it's a war memorial or a market cross. Either way, we'll have a look at that. There's also a pub up there too. There's plenty in this area. Absolutely loads. The Senior Citizens Centre is a community asset generously gifted to the parish in 1968 and administered by the parish council. It has a date stone of 1959 and it was opened in 1960. We're used to seeing these things, aren't we? Yes, this milestone does indeed indicate that this was once a much more important road. It's a Grade 2 listed structure as well. The parish notice board receives a TVI card here. Notice how the board only refers to Bramham as opposed to Bramham cum Oglethorpe. The council is termed just as Bramham Parish Council. You can pick up a bus or two here as well. Bramham has no railway station, but if you need public transport, you'll be after the number 7 to Harrogate and the 174 to Wetherby. We're about to cross back over the beck again here as well. It runs alongside the Senior Citizen Centre and then under a bridge before heading north towards the River Wharf. The cross is a war memorial, the main one in the village. There are 59 names on this one, 46 from World War I and 13 from World War II, all listed on the plaques around a 3-step plinth. You kind of don't realise it, but Bramham Beck is right underneath your feet here. This bridge is kind of at an angle. The beck comes like across here like this and it runs underneath. So, whoa, get the camera down here. There's the beck. Pretty little bridge there as well. And this is right outside the Red Lion. Every Wednesday there's a quiz night here according to that sign. This then is the centre of the village where Front Street meets Clifford Road. There's a small convenience store here, but most people in the village use Wetherby for a large supermarket. There's also a garage here too, seemingly both a local car dealership and a garage all rolled into one. Now let's go and find the medical centre, which is round the corner on Clifford Road. Wikipedia tells me Bramham has an ambulance station as well as this, although this may now have moved to Wetherby after upgrades to the A1 meant access to the motorway was no longer easy. Across the street is an old schoolhouse. You'll remember the modern day primary school is just outside the boundaries in Clifford, meaning Bramham Parish has no school of its own. Okay, with the village centre behind us, let's head for the A1 next. Tenter Hill is our next road to have a look at. This runs towards the A1, but it doesn't join it. At the end, there's a set of steps which take us up to Paradise Way. Once up the steps, you'll see a bridge over to the left. That carries Thorner Road over the A1, but we'll be seeing enough of the A1 later. What we're interested in here is the village sign. This is the sign you can see in the thumbnail of this video. You'll notice it has a couple of buildings on it, and it's the one at the bottom which is of the most interest. Now, depicted on this village sign, there's a house. That's called Bramham Park, and there's also the church there as well. It's quite nice, but it's this I'm interested in here. Now, Bramham Park is a massive house and massive parkland to the south of the main village. Now, I won't be able to access it. The gardens and the grounds and the house, they're all only open by appointment, and I don't have an appointment, so I won't be able to get onto Bramham Park to show you it. However, it does warrant its own section, this, because it's used every year for something that music fans always enjoy coming to. Bramham Park is a Grade 1 listed country house constructed in a classical style, built to a linear plan with a main range linked by colonnades to flanking pavilions. The house is surrounded by a 200-hectare landscape park ornamented by a series of follies and avenues laid out in the 18th century landscape tradition. Beyond that is 500 hectares of arable farmland. It was built for Robert Benson. It has remained in the ownership of Benson's descendants since its completion in 1710. The estate would pass into the hands of his son-in-law, George Fox Lane, who was given the recreated title of Baron Bingley in 1763. From him, the estate went through various members of the Fox Lane family, eventually coming into the possession of George Lane Fox. Note the name difference. He was known as the Gambler. He was an MP for Beverley. Following a serious fire in 1828, he was obliged to move to nearby Bowcliffe Hall. The house was then left empty and derelict for 80 years until it was restored in 1908. Today it remains a private residence in the hands of Nick Lane Fox, while the park is the setting for the annual Bramham Horse Trials and the Leeds Festival, which moved to Bramham in 2003. The parkland surrounding the house contains a number of Grade 1 listed ornamental structures, including a chapel which was built in around 1760. South of the house stands the Gothic temple, consisting of 2 stories. It's octagonal in plan with buttresses at each of the corners. In 1907 it was converted into a water tower to supply spring water to the house, and it was used as such until after World War II. The open temple was probably constructed in the early 18th century. It was also known as the Lead Lads Temple from the lead statues which once stood on the pediment. They were stolen by vandals. The Ionic Temple, or Rotunda, stands in the Black Fen pleasure ground, which lies a mile from the house. From the Rotunda, 6 straight paths lead to other features of the estate. Bramham Island on the north side of Queen Charlotte Strait in the Central Coast region of British Columbia, Canada, was named after Bramham Park. Named in association with that were Slingsby Channel on its north side and the Fox Islands, which lie in the entrance to that channel as its opening into the Queen Charlotte Strait. This next part is very residential. It's a much more modern area of Bramham with a lot of post-war housing. I'm going to use this area to squeeze in some more bits I haven't yet been able to. For example, the village has become increasingly diverse in nature. A large part of it is included in a conservation area, and all the land outside the present built-up area is currently designated Greenbelt. Heading up Linden Avenue, we've got a couple of features to speak about on this corner. There's a standalone post box, but Bramham has no post office. The phone box has a defib machine. Whilst those houses are all brick built, most of the older houses in the centre of the village are constructed of magnesian limestone, which was quarried within the parish. Stone from Bramham was also used for the pendants and hanging ornaments on the vaults and ceilings of York Minster. Bramham limestone was transported to York by water from nearby Tadcaster or from Cawood via the Bishop's Dyke. You'll need to watch the Selby series for that. We've arrived at a small garden now on Linden Road. Time to sit on that bench for a moment. Just having another perch for a few moments on this bench. The weather's starting to warm up a bit now. The sun's come out from behind the clouds and I'm starting to sweat a bit more. That's going to be fun when it gets high up in the sky. Okay, there's another very important historical thing to talk about as regards Bramham, and something that I can't show you. There's nothing that I can go to film to actually tell you about it, and that was a battle. So here comes a special section again about the Battle of Bramham Moor. The Battle of Bramham Moor was fought in the snow on the 19th of February 1408. Henry Percy, the first Earl of Northumberland, who with other nobles had rebelled against King Henry IV, was met here by Sir Thomas Rokeby. The rebels were cut to pieces and Percy was killed. His head, with its silver locks, was carried off and set on a stake on London Bridge. There's a memorial stone marking where the Earl of Northumberland fell and was killed at Blackfen Wood, but it was moved from the actual site of the battle some years ago. In 2008, to commemorate the 600th anniversary of the battle, an information board and a 2-sided limestone memorial stone bearing the words Bramham and Site of Battle was erected on Paradise Way, which crosses the battlefield site. I don't know how much more I dare put into this one. I've already given you so much more than I thought I was going to originally here. I did promise you though a bit more about the college. The graves at All Saints Churchyard are of those who died as a result of a severe cholera outbreak in 1869. It's what would eventually close the college. Now we're on Clifford Road and we've turned right. Where I'm pointing with my finger here is where Bramham Primary School is located, just over the border into Clifford. All that's left to do now is walk back to the car via Clifford Road. I don't know about you, but I've certainly enjoyed my walk around this place. It's ridiculously loaded with history. So that's pretty much it for the main walk around Bramham. Now I haven't mentioned Oglethorpe or Oglethorpe, whichever it's pronounced in these parts. That's basically because it's just really a farm, nothing much more than that. And I can't access it anyway because it's on a private road and there's no footpath leading across that private land. So I can't actually visit that. But if I can find a picture of it, it's coming your way in today's picture bit. I've included this painting of the Bramham Moor Hunt because I felt it was historically important. However, I do not condone fox hunting, and I certainly do not wish to promote it. So in case you Bramham locals were wondering where I parked for this walk, it was here on Bradford Close. And as if you needed proof, there's the car. I'm about to hop into that actually to take you down to the one thing I haven't spoken about yet, and that's Bowcliffe Hall. There's also an aircraft hangar out here because this part of West Yorkshire did have an RAF base. It was right on the border with North Yorkshire, the modern day North Yorkshire anyway, because it was called RAF Tadcaster. And the aircraft hangar still exists. You can see it from the road, but you can't access it unless you've got permission to be on that farmland. There's no public footpath that passes it. So for the third and final time in this video, here comes another special section before I finish this one off about the RAF history of the area. During the First World War, there was an aerodrome at Bramham Moor, which opened on the 18th of March 1916, set in 198 acres of land. It was called RFC Bramham Moor. In early 1918, after the RAF was formed, RFC Bramham Moor became known as RAF Tadcaster. In July of 1918, a group of American pilots and ground staff were based here for training. After the war, with a reduced need for warplanes, the aerodrome was closed down. One large hangar remains as a listed building amongst the barns of Headley Hill Farm. You can see this quite easily from the A64 as you head towards York. During the Second World War, vehicles were left on the old grassed areas to deter the site being used as a landing ground in the event of an invasion. So after driving down Paradise Way, you come to a little junction where there's a set of traffic lights, and if you turn right at that junction, you come along this road here, which runs alongside the A1. I'm having to shout because it's quite noisy. And this is also where you would go to access Bramham Park. Now the gates are open, and it is, as you can see, a public footpath, but you can't go in without an appointment. Grounds open all year by appointment. Now that probably just means the grounds of the actual house itself, and the footpath is probably accessible all year round without an appointment. I understand that, but there's no footpath which links from here to the house and back again. I checked on the map, so it would just be a straight walk through all the way to Thorner, I think is where it comes out, or maybe Wotherson Woods, somewhere there. But you've had your special section about Bramham Park anyway. I've come down here to talk about Bowcliffe Hall, and that's the other way, up here. Built between 1805 and 1825, Bowcliffe Hall is a Grade 2 listed building, now used as an office and event space. The building is constructed of ashlar limestone under a shallow, pitch slate roof. It's mainly built across 2 stories, although the east wing has been modified to 3. William Robinson, a cotton spinner from Manchester, was the man behind its construction. Robinson sold the property to John Smythe, who died in 1840, and the estate was then purchased by George Lane Vaux, who had lived in it for a time after Bramham Park had been fire damaged. In 1917, the house was bought by the aviation pioneer Robert Blackburn from Kirkstall, the chairman of Blackburn Aircraft Limited, who lived there until 1950. He and his family were the last to use the hall as a residential home. These days it's much more about business, having undergone extensive refurbishment into an office space. It overlooks the A1, which is just about the only thing you haven't seen in Bramham here until now. What a wonderful corner of the city of Leeds this is. And it's at that set of traffic lights where you turn to go towards Bowcliffe Hall and Bramham Park that you'll find this property. That barn over the way there used to be the old Royal Mail staging post on the old Great North Road, and I know that thanks to a follower who told me that piece of information before I came here today. Thanks very much, Dave. I'm sure you appreciate seeing that house in this video. And that's the end for this video. That's Bramham cum Oglethorpe, and there's plenty to talk about here, isn't there? I hope I've covered it all. If not, you know where the additional information comment is. It's right down there underneath the video. Hope you've enjoyed this one. It's time for me to move on to my next one here in Leeds. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and this has been the parish of Bramham cum Oglethorpe, and I'm out.